tales to tell, in tales of dust, you and I, tunneling beneath the...
Here we find ourselves again, folks, under the Silver Lake. Hello, my name is Micah, and in this follow-up video I'll be covering topics involving Sam's visions or dreams, his internalization of imagery and experiences, references that the film makes to conspiracy theories, as well as ideas that I have about some of the events and characters in the film. While most of the ideas in this video are my own, not all of them are, but I will be expanding on some theories that are already out there. I did join the subreddit for this film, which I have contributed to, but have not posted all of my ideas yet because I really wanted to publish these videos first. Before we jump into the new items at hand, I'd like to revisit the 1492 theory that I introduced in my previous video. If you haven't watched my first video, I'll leave the link down below in the description or as a card here. I wanted to make a deeper connection to the failure of Christopher Columbus and his calling of Native Americans Indians, even though they were not, and he did not find India like he sought out. In a weird way, Sam does something similar here. He finds what we know to be the tombs after he solved the code in the song Turning Teeth, but he doesn't know that they're tombs yet. However, as important as symbology and code-breaking are to Sam, he completely glosses over the fact that the entrance of the tomb has symbols of the Eye of Ra, likely as a protective force for those that enter and never leave, as well as Anubis, essentially the god of death, having associations with mummification, embalming, the afterlife, cemeteries, tombs, and the underworld in ancient Egyptian religion. Although Sam walks right past these symbols, he still ends up assuming that the tomb is actually a bomb shelter.
It's a fucking bomb shelter.
And begins to think that nuclear holocaust or a major war are imminent.
Some kind of bunker in case of a nuclear war.
It's not a shelter.
So what is it?
That's all I have for now regarding the 1492 theory. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. But let's move on. At first, this section might seem like a generalization of the human psyche attributable to just about everyone on the planet. But for the sake of our mission here, there are many references in the movie that point to what Sam is thinking or doing and how that manifests in his unconscious mind. I say unconscious because subconscious isn't necessarily a scientific term, and when referring to something as simple as our perception of others, it is referred to as unconscious bias and not subconscious bias. The first manifestation that I want to talk about is after Sarah goes missing. Sam has a vision or possibly a dream where he sees Sarah swimming in the pool outside his window. Although nude, she has her makeup done up to make her look like Marilyn Monroe, complete with a beauty mark. The first couple of times I watched this, I wondered why this specific getup. However, when Sam has the aspiring actress over at his apartment, she sees the Polaroid that he has of Sarah and says that she knows her. The magnets holding Sarah's picture are actually images of Marilyn Monroe swimming. So we're seeing that subliminally or unconsciously the director is showing us where Sam's mind is, and that this is significant to understanding how his brain works. Really, this is true of humans in general, although our dream manifestations aren't always so literal and tend to be more abstract, unless you're like me and have lucid dreams. Although it's not entirely clear whether this is a dream sequence or something that Sam is imagining, I think it could go either way, as at the end of the sequence, after barking at Sam, Sarah jumps back into the water and disappears as Sam looks on disappointed or even scared. Then in the next scene, we see Sam waking up in bed the next day. The next internalization I'd like to look at is probably the most obvious one, but still just as important. Many times throughout the movie, we see this Playboy magazine that Sam says is his favorite issue because he stole it from his dad when he was a kid.
My favorite issue.
Why this one?
Oh, I found it in my dad's tool drawer in our garage when I was really young.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Did you steal it?
Mm-hmm.
Later on in the film, Sam meets the daughter of Jefferson Sevens, and they go swimming in the Silver Lake Reservoir. Once Sam and Millicent are alone in the reservoir, she brings up that she thinks she's being followed and is also trying to figure out what happened to her father. Then someone begins firing a gun at them, and they both dive under the surface. Sam opens his eyes to see that Millicent has been shot, but the way she begins to sink directly reflects the cover of his favorite Playboy magazine. So it begs the question, Is this just an amazing coincidence, or could this be another sequence of events that is manifesting in Sam's head? The last piece of evidence here I want to discuss is a bit of a doozy, so stick with me. After Sam gets around to reading the zine Under the Silver Lake, we cut to him walking on the trail behind his apartment complex. He comes across several dog treats on the path, and next a dead dog that appears to have been cut open with flies swarming around it. A little bit further, he sees what looks like Sarah from behind hovering over a man's body and eating the entrails. Gross, I know, but worse is when the person turns around, it's not Sarah at all, but a man that we don't seem to meet at any point in the movie. Perhaps just a monster-type manifestation of his perception of Sarah or any other beautiful girl being a man-eater. The man dressed like Sarah begins barking at Sam while looking at him, and the body on the ground slithers off into the bushes before Sam wakes up on his couch. Okay, there's a lot here, obviously. Firstly, let's address the dog treats. Sam carries dog biscuits with him in his pocket. We'll expand on this fact later, but for now, the fact that he carries these places the biscuits in his dream. Next, we see what appears to be Sarah's dog, dead on the ground. This could be pointing to the fact that Sam was just reading about the dog killer before he went to sleep, but I have another theory about this that I'll get to later. Next, we see what appears to be Sarah, as he'd been watching a movie with her not long before, but his perception of her seems to have changed. Perhaps because he felt rejected that she didn't want to go to the bar with him, as he surely was hoping to get laid and didn't. The body slithering away took me a while to put a possible explanation to, but what I came up with was the presence of skunks around the complex. Before Sam meets Sarah and gives her dog a biscuit, he sees a skunk in the garden of his complex, and it quickly scurries off into the bushes and disappears, much like the body on the trail. Perhaps this is a stretch, but our brains make strange connections when we're in REM sleep. The point of all of this is that Sam does indeed internalize a lot of imagery, and we're deliberately being shown this throughout the movie by the director. Is it possible that Sam could be schizophrenic? I wouldn't rule it out. Schizophrenia, as described by our friends over at Google, can manifest in a lot of ways that Sam could be experiencing. A short list includes aggression, agitation, hostility, delusion, belief that an ordinary event has special or personal meaning, anger, anxiety, loss of interest or pleasure in activities, hallucination, paranoia, persecutory delusion, and the list goes on. Sam embodies all of these things. He has no interest in working, saving himself from being evicted. He's paranoid that somebody is following him. He displays anger and aggression and believes that everyday ordinary things have special or hidden meanings. In the next section, I'd like to talk about the owl's kiss, what I think it could represent or be a reference to, and whether or not she is real or an embodiment of something else. Obviously, throughout the film, we're inundated with images of owls in the author's home, in Sarah's bedroom, on the fence at Silver Lake Reservoir Dog Memorial, and on the dollar bill. From the film's perspective, I think this is representative of the fact that there are a lot of people around Sam that know things that he's just not privy to or is unable to recognize. One place that we definitively never see an owl statue is in Sam's apartment. From an outside movie perspective, I think that the owl's kiss is a reference to two things. One is Bohemian Grove, which is described as an exclusive gentleman's club and campground where the world's richest elites, artists, musicians, business leaders, government officials, media executives, former presidents, etc., gather to do strange stuff. Most notably, the theory first presented by Alex Jones, yes, Alex Jones, asserts that these people burn an effigy out in the California redwood forest and perform the ritual called the cremation of care in front of a giant owl statue. I bring this up because in the zine Under the Silver Lake, the author tells us that he believes she may be a member of a long-standing American cult with origins in trade and finance. Coincidence? Maybe. But for a movie deeply rooted in conspiracy culture, I doubt it. The other reference I think could be here is the film Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. To not give away too much, basically Tom Cruise's character, Bill, ends up at an exclusive party that's attended by some of the richest and most influential people in the world. The women's attire for the occasion? Completely naked except for Venetian-inspired masks. A strange ritual performed in front of all culminates in a sprawling orgy throughout the mansion that the party is hosted. To me, the mask worn by the owl's kiss isn't too much different than the ones from The Masked Ball and Eyes Wide Shut, also echoing the idea that Bill is not supposed to be at this party, and there are lots of people around him that know things that he doesn't, much like Sam. For this last section, I'll go ahead and talk about what I think the owl's kiss represents, or if she's even real. I've heard this theory before, and there's definitely some validity to it. Is the owl's kiss a representation of suicide? Well, we're led to believe by the cop that Sam talks to that the author did kill himself, and although the crime scene is incredibly gory, and we're not told how he might have killed himself, it's possible that he cut his own throat, and that is the reason that there's such a large amount of blood. Not a particularly common way to commit suicide, but it has happened. Sam does see the owl's kiss on the security cameras that the author has installed, but we're trusting that Sam isn't imagining this, and that the only other time we see the owl's kiss is under bizarre circumstances, and she's nowhere to be found in Sam's small apartment, even when he searches for her. So if the author did indeed kill himself, could it be possible that Sam was considering doing the same, as he might feel like a failure after his encounter with the songwriter? Well, let's consider what happens when Sam searches for the owl's kiss after she retreats into his bedroom. He looks in the closet, he looks under the bed, and he looks in a sock drawer. I didn't notice this the first time I watched the movie. Actually, my wife pointed it out to me, and for some reason it never occurred to me what he might have been doing by looking in the sock drawer. So I think it's possible that the owl's kiss is in Sam's head, and that this is another manifestation of him suffering from schizophrenia. On another related note, one of the members of my film club, Ashley, suggested the possibility that if the owl's kiss is indeed in Sam's head, that perhaps it's his portrayal of a powerful, all-knowing succubus of a woman that reflects his disdain for women that reject him or are not simply sex objects. We'll dig more into those themes in the next video, but for now, I'll leave you all with your thoughts. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. And like last time, take care and keep your eyes open.